Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rugby Breakdown. We're coming to you from the SSC grounds with the March Madness around the corner. Shanaka, a warm welcome to you, and the freshly cut grass smell of the SSC is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Intoxicating Sudarshana, no place I'd rather be.
Brilliant. And we have plenty of things to chat about, especially in the local club arena. Nippon Interclub Rugby League into the penultimate week with the last week's action. Now, in the second week, Shanaka, we had Navy Sports Club going down to CRNFC 17 points to 37. Candy Sports Club dominating Havelock Sports Club 29 points to 8. That was up in Nitawala in the play championship. Police just getting over Army Sports Club 15 points to 14, and CHNFC losing to Air Force in a high scoring affair 31 points to 44. Interesting games in the plate segment, but the cup games were kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because I think the game that everyone was looking for was CRNFC versus Navy. And I think CR got a big psychological boost and Navy got a big psychological downer in the middle of the week when they had to move from Valisara because of the discipline issues with Navy's last game. So Navy's home games will not be at Valisara for the rest of the season. So I think that was a big blow to the preparation for Navy and also that psychological barrier of going to Valisara, which is a very difficult place to go to. When they realized they didn't have to do that, I think CR got just a little bit more of a shot in the arm. So you could see that in the way they played, and it was quite an interesting game. I thought they were building up, they're peaking nicely and setting up a beautiful clash against Candy up in Nitavala next week. But everyone was hoping that perhaps the league might be blown wide open when Havelocks travelled up to Candy. But I think losing Umesh Madhushan has been a bit more of a problem for Havelocks than they would like to admit. He's an outstanding player. And of course, as the captain, all the preparations would have been around him in their lineouts and all of that kind of thing. And he had so much in the loose as well. So him migrating was a big loss for Coach Sanath Martis and the Havelocks team. And they've been struggling to recover. They've been playing well, but not nearly in the standard that they were in the last couple of years.
Yes, absolutely. Havelocks did struggle with the lack of Umesh Madhushan, like Shanaka mentioned. But Candy, of course, going in their merry way. They are a different beast when it comes to Nitawala. In Nitawala, it's very difficult to beat Candy as well. But how Candy got going in that game wasn't the normal Candy that we know of, Shanaka. It was stop-start affair. And like you mentioned last time, it was those three players who really did come to the party. And finally, Candy in the final minute, taking a penalty to finish a game in Nittawala is absolutely unheard of, isn't it? That does show that this Candy team is concerned about the amount of points that they're going to pile up.
Yes, they are, and I think that's because of the permutations as to what happens against CRNFC in Nittola. It shows that they've got one eye on that game. They're not absolutely confident of smashing CRNFC at Nittola, which is something they've done for the last maybe 15 years or so. So you can see that they're preparing for if there is a tie, what are we going to do? Let's make sure that we have all the options lined up, all our ducks in a row. So even if we lose that game, then with the points difference, we still can be declared league champions. So it shows that they have thought about this. It shows that they're playing the long game, and the league championship is really what they have in their sights. And those three players, like we mentioned, Nigel Ratwata, Tarinder Ratwata, and Srinath Surya Bandara, they are the best players in the country at the moment in terms of backs. They're the best players in the country in terms of skill. They're the best players in the country in terms of managing and reading a game as well. So that kind of experience you can't buy. And Candy have these three match winners in their side, and they would probably be asking themselves why they find themselves in this position so late in the season that somebody else can actually theoretically, technically, mathematically overhaul them with this kind of riches that they have.
Well, there is something very interesting coming up when it comes to Candy versus CR. We'll come to that a little later. But in the plate championship, it was a very interesting week. Police Sports Club almost losing out the contention for the plate championship against Army Sports Club. Shanaka 14 points to 15, just 1 point difference between the two teams. But Police will be very glad that they managed to get the win. But on the other hand, Air Force Sports Club are running riot. They are enjoying their rugby, and they are looking like the side to beat in that all important clash.
Oh, certainly. I think they probably missed out a little bit by not being in the Cup Championship. Them being in the Cup Championship would have actually made all the other games a little bit more interesting as well. But I think they have been probably the best, most flowing side in the tournament. Although Candy and Sia have been playing, have been winning and playing better rugby. Just in moments, Air Force have looked like really they are the team to beat. So if they had the kind of caliber of players in their in lineups as Candy and Sia can boast of, I think it would be a really outstanding side. But they're looking favourites. But at the same time, we have to remember that the match is at Police Park. And there's a very important factor that we don't often talk about. And Ishan Kabekun is a man in charge. And he's been in charge of a few deciders so far because Air Force versus Navy, he's the one that did that when Air Force lost from 21 points ahead. So that psychological barrier is there for Air Force as well. They'll be looking over their shoulder and thinking, we've got to put this game to bed. It's a little bit of a distraction for the players. He was in charge of Sierra FC versus Candy as well, a controversial game there. And now he's in charge of another very important matchup, Police versus Air Force for the Plate Championship. So it's going to be interesting to see how all the parties, whether the coaches, the players, and the referee, how they handle the pressure.
Well, let's take a look at how the points table stands as of now. Now, Kennedy Sports Club are very comfortable up in front, 51 points to their name. If they win the game against CRNFC, they will be unbeaten league champions. CRNFC, on the other hand, 45 points to their name. They need to absolutely win the game with a bonus point and make sure that Candy does not get a bonus point in order to have any claim for the league. Havelocks, of course, in a third position with 26 points and Navy with 21 points. In the plate segment, Air Force Sports Club have 29 points. They're just ahead of Police. Police with 28 points, CHNFC 14, and Army 13 points. Now, looking at the points table, Shanaka, next week's matchups, like we spoke about, we'll first talk about Air Force versus Police. Like you said, at Police Park, very interesting game because Police are just peaking at the end of the season. They did have a little bit of a stumble last weekend, but they will be looking to go all out at home grounds. Air Force, on the other hand, will be disappointed, like you said, of not being in that top four, but they will want to make sure that they end the season on a high with the plate championship. Who do you have your money on?
Well, I think it's better to win the plate championship than finish fourth in the league. That's probably something that Shamli Nawaz will be telling his players, as well as what Nilfa Ibrahim will be telling his players. So it's a big game for both these teams. Finishing fifth will be a real setup for next season, a setup for the knockouts as well. They get a lot of confidence from that. But my money is on Air Force because they've been playing really well. And I think they're a more fluent side and they are a more organized side. Police rely on a few players and they rely on their set pieces. So again, how the game goes, whether it's going to be a stop-start game, whether there's going to be a lot of mauling done, all of that will depend on how the game goes. So if Air Force can keep it flowing, if they can keep the ball in play as long as they can, then I think they will probably end up comfortable winners. All they have to do is not lose the game, whereas Police really have to beat them comfortably to win.
The games are lined up on the 17th, 18th, and the 19th. On the 17th, Police will play Air Force at Police Park. On the 18th, Havelocks will take on Navy Sports Club. That's at Havelock Park. And also on the 18th, CHNFC will play Army Sports Club at Racecourse. And on the 19th, the big game, Candy Sports Club taking on CRNFC. Now, Candy Sports Club taking on CRNFC could be a league decider. And last week, for some, very controversially, Shanaka made a statement that Candy are maybe over reliant on three of their star players, the three players who break the game for them: Nigel Ratwata, Tarinder Ratwata, and Surya Bandara. The news that we have here is Nigel Ratwata will not be available for this final affair, Shanaka, due to a reckless charge that he made in the last game against Havelock Sports Club. He's been cited and he's been given a one-match ban alongside his brother Damien Ratwata, who's been given a three-match ban. Shanaka, how important will this be for Candy Sports Club?
Well, it's huge. I think it's huge for Candy Sports Club because not only are they losing their most experienced player, they're losing somebody who has been the linchpin of that side. And with Heshan Jansen a little bit inexperienced inside him, Nigel has been the one who's calling the plays. He's been kicking beautifully out of hand as well. And that combination between him and Tarind at 10 and 12 is what has really kept Candy ticking, kept Candy able to use their reaches outside. Danushka Ranjan is somebody who might come off the bench for them. Dinal Ekanayaka has been good as well. Kavindu Pereira is so dangerous. But it's that distribution of the Ratwat, the lads, that has led to that happening. And without Nigel, it means that probably Tarinder is going to have to move to number 10. Now, that's not a problem for him because he's played there enough times before. But what happens to the 10-12 combination and what happens to the 12-13 combination is something which is of a bigger headache for Fasil Marija, the coach. So let's wait and see how they plug that gap. Are they going to bring Danushka Ranjan into 13, or are they going to bring Oshan Pereira into 12, or are they going to bring Danushka into 12? Who knows what they're going to do? Or are they going to bring Dinal Ekanayaka from the wing? Are they going to bring him inside? He's had experience playing in the inside backs as well. So, or are they going to do something completely different and bring Srinath Surya Bandara into fly half? Again, a position that I think he should have played a long time ago. He's just an outstanding player. He hated playing fly half, but I think he is one of the best players in that position as well. So lots to think about for Candy, and I think Sia will think, okay, we've got one of the big three out, which means we only have two real problems to worry about, and that will give them a little bit of confidence. And you see what they've been able to do with the confidence. So I think it's going to be a mouth-watering encounter, Sudarshana, and I just hope that we're going to see some scintillating rugby on show.
So Sunday 4 p.m. Make sure that you witness that game because that is going to be a very very interesting game after a long time. CR and FC traveling up to Nittavala with the league in contention. So that is going to be very interesting. On the other side, we will talk to you about some international rugby. So don't go anywhere. Well, the second week of the Six Nations concluded last weekend with some interesting games lined up. The three games that were worked out were absolutely amazing for neutral viewers like us. The first game, of course, Ireland taking on France, 32 points to 19. What a game that was. And then Scotland taking on Wales, 35 points to 17. Went the Scottish way. They won the Doddy Weir Cup as well. England mauling Italy 31 points to 14, but was unimpressive throughout the game. And now, talking a little more about that Ireland versus France game, Shanaka, what a game that was. World rank 1 taking on world rank 2. You said last weekend maybe it might be a little subdued one with both teams not wanting to show their hand entirely, but it was completely different. Both teams wanting to run everything that was thrown at them. And but the moment of the match, DuPont on Hansen. How about that? I mean, what can that halfback not do, Chanaka?
Well, I've seen that happen once before on a rugby field, Sudarshan. I don't know if you'd remember this from 2011, where Jerome Kano lifted Digby Ioane off the try line and dragged him back to the 5 meter line. Now, that was impressive, but Jerome Kano is a lot bigger than Digby Ioane, and Mac Hansen is a lot bigger than Antoine Dupont. And what he did was just unbelievable. And if any young players are watching, any smaller players are watching, size doesn't matter. It's all about the size of the fight in the dog rather than the dog in the fight. So I think that was just an unbelievable moment. But what you say is true and not also, Sudarshana, because although it was a high intensity game of running rugby, France were attacking a lot from broken play. And that Damien Penaud try, it goes back to the Serge Blanco tries from the 80s and the early 90s. It was just a wonderful French try to watch. But they didn't run any of their strike plays. They didn't really attack from first phase that much. We didn't see them really bringing out what needed to be done. It didn't look like they worried too much that they were at the receiving end of what was a comprehensive loss in the end, 32 points to 19. That's a big loss. So I don't think France were as concerned about losing this game as Ireland were about winning it. And this takes me back again to the early 2000s where you would see two of the best teams in the world, New Zealand and Australia, playing each other. You get to see some brilliant tries. And that's what we've come back to. And I think it was wonderful to watch that game, really entertaining game of rugby. But in the end, I think France, when they knew they had to tighten it up, they could. I think they were just feeling the pulse, feeling the temperature, putting their toe in the water, and they would be quite happy with what they took back home from that game.
Absolutely, because the French, like you said, it looked like the French flair that we know of. There is no structure per se in that French attack. So it didn't look like they were going to show what they had in store. Ireland, on the other hand, they did show like they wanted this one. They are hungry for that Grand Slam, isn't it?
Yes, and they're at the Aviva Stadium. They have to win for their home ground. It's not often that one plays two at home. So I think that was really a spectacle and an occasion that Ireland had wound themselves up for much more than the French had. So I think the result was predictable in a way, and they played well. I think Johnny Sexton came off maybe earlier than they would have liked, but I think the way they've been playing, they can afford to really rotate their players, and we might see that happen in the next couple of rounds. And how good were they? I thought they were really outstanding.
Massive controversy on James Lowe try, Shanaka, with all the technology that is available. If you're going to call that a try, I don't know how forward you can go. But then the important fact there was the TMO was not going to overrule the decision made by the man in the ground. That is what is written. That is how you operate. So the television match official did not have conclusive evidence to overrule the man on the ground.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that they didn't miss it, Sudarshan. I think what our problem is when there's a bad interpretation of the rules, a wrong interpretation of the rules, or if somebody misses something completely or sees something that wasn't there. Here, the TMO and the team actually saw it. They saw that his foot may or may not have touched the ground, and they decided while looking at it that there was nothing conclusive enough to say that he didn't, that he actually touched the ground at all. So I think that's important that the process is followed. We may not always agree with the opinion that has come through, or what somebody sees. Maybe you're an Ireland supporter and you see that it didn't touch the ground. If you're a French supporter or a neutral, you feel that it did touch the ground. But the fact is that they looked at it long and hard, and they made a decision. If they had missed it completely, then that would have been unacceptable. That wasn't what happened. And I think that it's important to draw the distinction between looking at something, coming to a conclusion via the process, rather than not looking at something at all.
Well, the second game of the week, Scotland taking on the Welsh. Welsh are in a lot of trouble. Scotland, on the other hand, are enjoying their time in the Six Nations. I think this is one of the most successful teams to take on the Six Nations in a long time. Back-to-back trophies for them. .eva trophy, something very, very personal to Scotland as well. One of their standout players. He passed away due to neural syndrome, and this is in his honor, and them winning it as a back-to-back trophy was very important to them.
Yeah, it was. Dottie Weir used to be one of my favorite players when he was playing for Scotland. And since he was playing, I think, maybe in the early 90s, since about 1996, Scotland have not won their first two games in the Six Nations Championship. And this is the first time they've done that since that time. So it was a really important win for them. And what really I liked about that game was the fact that Stuart Hogg went off early. And Scotland were much more fluent than they were even against England. Blair Kinghorn coming in, he adds a little bit more to the side. He's taller, he's less selfish, he passes the ball, he manages to cut back inside. And I think there's a lot of things that Stuart Hogg doesn't bring to the party, because Hogg likes to kick a lot as well. So they weren't kicking as much as they did without him. And we talked about seniority giving way to some junior players. And I think that enforced change that happened with the HIA, Stuart Hogg going off, really showed what they can do without him. And I hope that Gregor Townsend has noticed that as well.
Well, talking about force changes, um, Hogg going out because of the HIA was a force change, but Stephen Borthwick did some changes to his lineup against Italy for the Red Roses. Didn't really work out as he planned, isn't it, Shanaka? Now, he dropped Ben Young's highest capped English player. He dropped Marcus Smith, brought Farrell onto the mix. But Farrell, boy, didn't he kick some golden opportunities for England? And if you were even a flyer playing your school's game, if you kicked opportunities like that, you'll be out the next minute.
Absolutely, Sudarshan, and I see this in international rugby, and it really saddens me because I was watching this match. I think I was there, and I was watching New Zealand playing Canada in one of the Rugby World Cup matches. I think it would have been 2019, perhaps, and. This was a time that Kieran Reid was playing at number 6 and Adi Surveyor was playing at number 8 on the attacking scrums. But this time it was a 5 meter scrum, and Kieran Reid was like, hang on, I'm going to be number 8 for this one. And he picked up the ball and he couldn't score. And for me, it was just unbelievable that one of the best players of his time can't score off a 5 meter scrum against Canada. And unfortunately, that's when coaches give too much emphasis to a senior player, and they're afraid to drop him because of all the ramifications that may come from the media and the pressure and all that kind of thing. And I think that is a problem that they are facing here with England as well. They just are too afraid to drop Owen Farrell. And why would you drop Marcus Smith against Italy? Probably the weakest side in the competition. If the only reason you do that is to make Farrell look good. And even though they gave him all the opportunities to look good, he just shot himself in the foot because he was kicking away balls 5 meters away from the try line. And he wasn't really able to put people through all the tries that they scored. One penalty try and three off the rolling maul, and then one towards the end, which didn't really count. So I think that there is a real problem there. And Ollie Lawrence coming into number 12 may have solved the Manu Tuilangi problem. But whether you keep Farrell in the side, is just now a bigger issue than it was even before they dropped Marcus Smith.
Well, talking about problems, England had plenty around. But one thing that they did right to make sure that they were dominating that game was to shut out Italy, unlike the French did. They did French let Italy play, but England managed to shut them out. And Mauro Itoje was one of those men who really put his hand up in his defensive performance for England and made sure that he carried that line forward and the line speed was intact. But on Italy's part, Shanaka, I thought they lacked the sense of wanting to kick behind that rushing defensive line. And talking about Italy, plenty of footballers there in their side. And if they had maybe put the ball behind that rushing defensive line, Capuzzo at the back would have gotten more balls from the back three of the English to try and counter attack, isn't it?
Yes, they would have had to play a lot deeper, Sudarshana, to be able to do that. And it's also something you have to train. So Tommaso Allen would have needed to play much deeper in the pocket. And that sometimes means that Freddie Stewart can come up and you don't want to kick the ball to him too often as well. So it's an interesting tactic theoretically, but to actually execute, it's quite difficult. So England's line speed was just outstanding. A lot of people who are not England fans, including myself, may have thought that they were living on the offside line a little bit too much. But that's the way things go. And if a side is able to get that kind of line speed, it's always going to be difficult. We've seen even all the All Blacks struggle with the line speed of the likes of South Africa and people. So it was just a very good defensive performance from England, and I think they have to take credit for that area of the game which they have really tightened up. But their attack is looking quite woeful.
Yeah, it really is looking in shambles, especially with Farrell wearing that number 10 jersey. Now, looking at this week, of course, Six Nations will take a break. There will be no games. We will have the third week taking place in on the 25th and the 26th of February. Shanaka, looking at the English number 10 jersey, if Marcus Smith comes in there, number 12, would it be Warren Farrell
No,
again? No.
absolutely not. I mean, that is the one thing I'm convinced of. He cannot play at number 10. I think Ollie Lawrence put his hand up and he had a really good game. I really love Joe Marchant and what he brings to the side. Maybe he's not a 12, and I really like Henry Slade at 13 as well. But Ollie Lawrence or Manu Tuilangi.
Well, Manu Tuilagi, will he get a call up? We'll wait and see. Short break, and on the other side, we have some very, very interesting news to all Sri Lankan rugby fans. See you soon. Well, we have very, very interesting news for all Sri Lanka rugby fans. The trophy that is sought out by all of rugby in the world, the William Webb Ellis Trophy, is coming to Sri Lanka. Shanaka, absolutely brilliant news, isn't it, for Sri Lankans? once in a lifetime opportunity to try and witness that trophy, and sometimes maybe, just maybe, ha- grab a picture right next to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just this amazing opportunity, and very grateful for the sponsors to be able to do this and bring it to the Sri Lankan rugby loving public. I think even the sponsors are actually quite surprised at the kind of interest that it has generated, because perhaps they didn't know how popular international rugby was in Sri Lanka. And I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for young kids, especially to inspire them to take on the game, to see the trophy that the likes of Sia Khaleesi have put their fingers on. So I think it's going to be a stunning event.
Absolutely, Bob. Now, like Shanaka mentioned, only the Rugby World Cup winners are allowed to touch the trophy. The custodian who comes down with the trophy will be holding it with gloves on, and only World Cup winners are allowed to put their fingers on that trophy. Our beloved Richie McCobb managed to do that twice and thrice as well on 2019 when when he kept that trophy on the podium, looked at it with eyes saying, "You're leaving me this time around." Mastercard is are the ones who are in charge of bringing it down. One of the main sponsors of Rugby World Cup as well. The trophy will land in Sri Lanka on the 18th, and at the Ministry of Sports premises from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. will be a public viewing. And then on the 19th, it goes to CRNFC, the club that is celebrating their centenary this year. That's a massive, massive honor to CRNFC. And then on the 22nd, the trophy will travel to Candy Sports Club, where the Candy fans, the rugby crazy Candy public, will be able to witness the trophy. Shanaka, William Webb Ellis Trophy coming to Sri Lanka is going to inspire a lot of kids, like you said. What would you like to tell the public if you have at least an opportunity to bring your kids around? What should they do?
No, they should absolutely come around. Just clear your calendars for the weekend. If you're in Kandy, if you're in Colombo, there's plenty of opportunities. So make sure you're there and inspire your kids to take up a beautiful game.
Well, I, for one, you can guarantee that I will be around that trophy as much as I can, because remember, only the greats have been able to be around that trophy. With that, we will leave you today from the Rugby Breakdown. I hope you've enjoyed as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Until we meet you next time, I'm Sudarshana signing off alongside Shanaka Amarasinghe.